Hello, my name is Ivan from Silicon Serbia office, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use large language models to increase your productivity. Whether you are a programmer, marketing specialist, a recruiter, a project manager, or something else, there's going to be something for you in this video. First, we're going to kick off the video with the explanation on how large language models work, so you have an idea on what kind of constraints they have, and then we are going to move to examples, so stay tuned. Probably you already heard about ChatGPT and that people use it for all sorts of different things. But is it really that powerful? There is something called Dunning-Kruger effect in theory of learning, where people who know less about certain subject think they're experts. And a lot of people are actually in stage number 1 of this curve, where they think that ChatGPT can do everything and anything, which of course is not entirely true. So the point of this session is to move at least 1 point to the right after we finish with it. Large language models are based on artificial neural networks, which are mathematical approximations of biological neural networks. And they share the same feature, ability to learn. When comparing biological brain, it has around 100 billion neurons and 1,000 trillion synapses or connections between those neurons. And that is where knowledge is actually stored, in connections between neurons. When comparing it to largest large language models, GPT-3, that's used currently in ChatGPT, has 44 billion neurons and 175 billion synapses, which you can see is not even comparable, it's much smaller than biological brain, while GPT-4, largest language model so far, published a few weeks ago, has 22 billion neurons and 100 trillion synapses, which is still much smaller than biological brain and far away from the overall intelligence that humans have, not just understanding text and speech. When talking about natural language processing is a field of artificial intelligence that aims to understand written data, in this case understand text. So how much time is needed for a newborn in order to start understanding the language? So in this case, the question is how much time the biological brain needs to train itself to understand the language. Answer is roughly around 12 months, but for very simple spoken comments. So almost a year of constant input of the data to biological brain is needed for human brain to actually understand very simple comments. And even after that, if you give a financial report to a 5-year-old, so 5 years worth of data, it still won't understand it because it needs more information. That's why these artificial models also need huge amounts of data in order to be trained to understand complex text. So the next question we are going to answer is, how do large language models work? Without explaining any underlying mathematics in order to simplify the explanation so we can get a bigger picture of how these models work. There are 2 types of large language models, representational and generative. Today we are covering just generative large language models. Their main goal is to generate text. The idea is pretty simple. Try to predict next word. So these models read billions of sentences online and learn which words are more likely to come next. So when the model guesses the word correctly, it gets a reward. When it makes a mistake, we punish it. And these models tend to learn all sorts of things from the data. We can see that later, good and bad things as well. And this is actually how ChatGPT works. So the mechanism works like this. Each word is transformed into a vector, array of numbers, and you try to predict the next word by combining all word vectors that appeared before the word we are trying to predict. And these models do that by applying weighted average on those vectors. So basically, each and one of the words on the left will have an impact on the predicted word in a different intensity, which is defined by weight parameter. Weight parameter is learned in training process. So model is reading billions of sentences and trying to figure out how words on the left affect the word that should be predicted. ChatGPT has around 170 billion parameters, so it's a huge amount of these weights that need to be adjusted, and it's a very complex process, either from computational power and also from the data perspective. You need huge amounts of data. But what is important to understand from this? This is why it's very important to understand that every answer you get in ChatGPT is depending on words that appeared before it. So it really depends on how do you ask it. That's the thing that we should remember from this slide. So why are these models appearing right now? Before, we didn't have huge amounts of data to train these models on. With rise of social media, we have much more data in order to train these models. That's one reason. The second reason is right now we have extremely powerful farms of computers that can train actually these models. And that's why the complexity of the models is exploding in the previous few years, as you can see on the graph on the right. These models have limitations, and we need to understand them. By reading billions of sentences online, these models tend to pick up all sorts of human-like behavior. They tend to become racist, sexist, fascist, all sorts of different negative things. And we cannot blame model for that. Model just picked up human behavior from those texts. It is just trying to predict the next word. So if it read a lot of fascist texts, it will try to pick up and predict words that appear in those types of texts, most probable words that will come next. That's the main reason why ChatGPT was published online. So right now, when you use ChatGPT, you have thumbs up and thumbs down for each of the answers that ChatGPT gives you, and you can actually report that kind of behavior. That information is going back to the model to retrain and to rectify this behavior that these models can have. Additionally, these models tend to produce misinformation and fake news. So when you think on how they work, they just try to predict next word based on the text it already read. So these models cannot be used as knowledge bases. They just try to predict statistically which word is the most probable to come next. And that's it. So it often hallucinates information. So when you ask something very specific, for example, who did something, it will know that it should generate name. So it can generate any kind of name. It doesn't have to be the right one. So these models are good, but they're just trying to predict the next word and often can hallucinate. Have that in mind. Also, there is, of course, privacy and security issues with these models. And ChatGPT has that on the home screen. So when you are using it, do not share any personal information, phone numbers, emails, anything that shouldn't be shared with larger public, because the data is going to Microsoft online services. So with all this knowledge on how large language models work and having in mind these limitations, let's see how can we use them to increase productivity. So right now I'm going to cover potential use cases for ChatGPT for different types of employees. So first, we're going to cover some general communication things that you can do with large language models. Then we're going to cover how recruiters, marketing team, project managers, and programmers can use large language models. So first, we're going to start with communicational usage of ChatGPT. And I'm going to show you 3 different examples. Of course, there are many more. I just picked 3 that sounded interesting. So composing complex and hard emails where words need to be picked carefully, sending emails to clients, to your boss, and similar. Replying to social media and recruitment emails politely. And third example would be to write resume, project summaries, and biography of the employee. So let's write an email to the client. And I have an example here. I'm working as a programmer and I have too many tasks on my plate. How to politely tell my manager and to the client that I need help or reorganization to help me. Write me a polite email. and the ChatGPT will generate polite email just as you requested. So basically the middle of the email says, I believe that the quality of my work is important to our team and to our client, and because of that, we should either add more people without sacrificing quality. If you're not satisfied with the answer, you can always click regenerate, and it will generate another email until you are satisfied with the response. So it is generating word by word until you are satisfied. Let's see another example. How to reply to a recruiter. So recruiter sent me this email, and then that's the email from the recruiter. And our prompt is how to politely refuse this offer. Let's ask that to ChatGPT, and it will write me an email for that. So I open ChatGPT, create a new chat, and see how to politely refuse the offer. And in this case, ChatGPT will write email for you. You can write to be either friendly, polite, it will do like you say. Let's see one more example. For example, I'm a Java developer with experience in database modeling, web development using Spring, and I have experience with Angular. Write a short CV for me with more related skills for my profile. Okay, let's write a CV based on this. So we are asking to add more tools and more related skills, not just the ones that I have written here. So if I open the chat, I ask it, it will write me a CV, basically with all the summary. So I can see it added Spring framework, it added Agile, SVN, Git, Jenkins, and other technologies. And also generated professional experience, fake professional experience, and fake projects for this particular role, which is very interesting, of course. And let's see another prompt. Write me best headline for LinkedIn based on this. So right now you have your own CV. You can either copy paste your own CV, or you can use this one and then ask it another question. Write me the best headline for LinkedIn for this, and the answer would be experienced Java developer with expertise in database modeling, Spring, Angular. Maybe it's too long. Let's regenerate. Now make it shorter, and it will generate Java developer, Spring, Angular, database modeling. As you can see, all of this makes perfect sense. And these are just a few examples that you can use with ChatGPT for general communication. Recruiters can actually use ChatGPT for certain tasks. And we are going to show 3 examples. How to extract questions based on job description, interview questions, how to automatically screen CV based on evaluation towards a position, and how to create LinkedIn search queries. So let's go with the first example, generating interview questions based on CV. So right now you can see a typical CV, in this case DevOps engineer, with work experience, skills, and in the end we have a prompt. Create me a list of HR technical interview questions for this candidate, both HR and technical questions. Copy, paste it to ChatGPT, and see the answer. So I can see it says what motivates you to do your work in DevOps field. So it looks like a legit HR question. So 5 HR questions, 5 technical questions. Right? I can say write me more. It will write me even more questions. So I can see right now I have round 2 for this. The second example would be to automate CV screening and evaluation towards a position. So in this case, we're going to have a description of the actual position, and we're going to have a CV. So this is a CV, the same as in the previous example. And then our prompt is this profile relevant to the role described in the following article? This can be a snippet from a client, what they want. It can be either the ad or job, and then we can see if this candidate described by this CV relevant to this particular role. Create a new chat and paste it. As you can see, ChatGPT can find implications between 2 texts. So in this case, it says, yes, this profile is relevant for role described in the article, has 5 years of DevOps and they actually want DevOps. Candidate's skills in scripting such as Bash, Python, and Ruby, as well as other experience, is actually good for the profile that we have. So we can see it has very good understanding of context, and you can use it to imply relationships in text. And the last example would be regarding creating LinkedIn search queries based on CV. If we move to that example, I'll just copy based on this job description, create me a LinkedIn search query. So this is a job description for a particular project, for example, role that you have. So it's a description of the role and responsibilities for that particular role. So objectives, responsibilities, and required skills. And let's see how can ChatGPT write you a LinkedIn search query in this case. So here's the search query. Keywords are this that you can use for this particular role. Location can be like that. And additional filters are civil engineering, customer experience, larger company experience. In this case, civil engineering is hallucinated, as we can see. So let's generate another one. So in this case, this is what we wanted. Generate an actual query for LinkedIn. If I copy this just so I can see it. So you can see it's a query that you can put directly to LinkedIn and search this type of profile. It wrote everything automatically. This is just a small example of what you can do with ChatGPT and what kind of examples you can try as a recruiter. The set of ideas is unlimited, so just let your imagination do the work. The next type of profile that we can cover is marketing specialists. And here we are going to cover 2 examples: creating content for social media channels, writing fancy posts, and creating surveys for different subjects. So let's write a social media post about team building that we had. So write it just in one sentence, in this case the query. It will write the full post about fun that we had and similar. So I can say rewrite and be funny, for example. So it will be more engaging in terms of the language. So in this case it says, who says team building can be a party, and similar. So you can see the possibilities are limitless. Let's try another example where we are about to write an email about the upcoming session about large language models. And actually, in order to send you an invite for this session, the invite was generated. So you can just give it a few pointers. Okay, I want this, that, and that in an email, and write it. And in this case, be funny as well. So it will write something that is engaging for the people. And as you can see, it is very similar to what you have received as an invitation for this particular event. And it's a pretty large email. If we want to be shorter, be shorter. And it will write something very small for us. The second example was about writing surveys for different subjects. Okay, create me a list of questions for IT company employee satisfaction survey. Something similar to survey we already had in Synchron. And it is going to write a few questions. And you can see a lot of these questions actually appeared in our official survey that we had. How do you feel about your workload and manageable and reasonable? Do you feel the company values and recognizes your contributions and similar? And you can write continue. It will write more, and you can write hundreds of different questions and evaluate them by reading manually. Moving on with different profiles, let's see how project management people can use ChatGPT for their everyday tasks. So in this case, we have 3 examples: meeting summaries and action item generation, project planning, and generating Excel formulas for different criteria. Let's see how can we generate meeting summary based on the transcript of the meeting itself that you can collect from these. So our prompt is generate short minutes of meeting and action items from the following meeting transcript. and we just put the transcript of the meeting. It's a pretty long meeting, so it's a long transcript. And inside the transcript, you can see that you have multiple people speaking, and then you know what each person said. So in this case, copy and paste, and let's see minutes of meeting and action items. So in this case, these were the attendees of the meeting. This was the agenda based only on the transcript, and this is the list of action items that people who were on the call actually agreed on. If you're not satisfied, you can of course regenerate. And right now you can see that attendees comma separated, and agenda approval of minutes, resolution to purchase laptop computers. This is a summary, and then these are actual items based on the summary of this particular article. So let's see how can we use ChatGPT for planning. I'll give it a query, and then we're going to read it in ChatGPT. So, create me an email for upcoming sprint planning meeting with agenda, where we will discuss which tools to use for data migration in current project, and write me a set of steps in research procedure for this task for 3 team members. Maya, Marco, and Ivan divide tasks to those 3 employees. So basically, you know what you want to do. Let ChatGPT create you an agenda, and let you create goals and tasks for 3 different people that are there. So basically, divide tasks amongst them, and let's see what it generated. So okay, it generated the agenda, provisional agenda for data migration, so data migration goals and objectives, discussion of available data migration tools, Q&A, and it created provisional list of tasks for each one of the employees. So this can be used as a starting point to an actual plan and actual agenda for a meeting. And let's see the last example for manager. Project managers works a lot with Excel documents. So in this case, I can describe a table. I have a table of resources, employees, on my project. Columns A and B contain employee name, column C shows seniority level, and column D shows costs for that person. Create me an Excel formula that will sum up all the costs for senior and medium team members. So in this case, let ChatGPT generate an Excel formula. So you explain how the table looks like, and it will generate whatever you want. So in this case, we experimented with even more complex tables, and it does it perfectly. So in this case, you can see it sums all seniors, and then sums up all mediors. So instead of thinking of how to write your own Excel formulas, you can use ChatGPT to generate them. Just explain how table looks like, and it should be able to do so. Moving on with examples. The last but not least, assisting programmers. There are many uses of ChatGPT for programmers, for code generation, for code review and refactoring, and I'm going to show you a few examples. So let's see how ChatGPT generates code. So I'm giving it a prompt like this. Write Java class that represents a student with methods for average grade calculation as well as method for phone number validation, and let's see what it does. So it generates a class with a list of grades, with phone number, with age and name, with construct, with method to calculate average grade, as you can see the code is correct, and validation of phone number with regular expressions, and it also looks correct. Right now we can ask, write unit test for this class, and let's see how it does. Okay, unit tests. In this case, it created a test suite and test to calculate grade, test if the phone number is valid. So in this case, it says this is a valid phone number. So assert true, this phone number is invalid because of the number of digits, and this is also invalid based on the method that you have written above for number validation. The second example could be to write unit tests for a targeted piece of code. In this case, let's see, for email validation. Copy, paste it into a ChatGPT. So you can do this with even your code which you already have. So write a query, generate unit tests for this piece of code, and let it generate. As you can see, it wrote multiple tests. So it wrote tests for valid email, assert true, invalid email, as you can see, it's not valid, null email, empty email, and all sorts of different test cases. So in the third example, we are going to check if code has any security vulnerabilities, and we have a Java method in this case that connects to the database. So copy, paste, and basically our prompt is this. This is what we are asking ChatGPT, and this you can copy from any development environment and let it execute. And ChatGPT says, yes, this code has security vulnerability called SQL injection. You all know what it is. And it also says, how can you fix that in this case? Moreover, there are extensions for ChatGPT that you can use in your development, like IntelliJ or Visual Studio Code. I'm going to show you one of those extensions. For example, I have plain Java class, select all the code, right-click, and I have Code GPT extension installed in my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to type Ask Code GPT and say, write unit tests for this code, and hit enter. Right now, it is basically executing this prompt and on this particular code. So it's sending the same code to ChatGPT. So alternative way to do this is to copy paste this code, basically select everything, copy, go to ChatGPT, and basically say the same thing as I did there. Write unit tests, and then paste the code, and it will write me unit tests. So this is one way to do this. The second way would be to basically do it from Visual Studio Code directly. If I click here, it copy pastes all of my tests in this case. So it's a little bit easier to use it from the environment. The second example is I have a Python script, in this case Python class with one method. I want to document it. So I select all the code, right click, ask Code GPT, put comments, okay, I need a typo, put comments to put comments for each line of this code, and it executes a query. Wait a little bit in order for it to generate, and I have comments. If I copy this, I can see I have comments for each and one of the lines inside this Python file. I can always ask it, for example, if you used Python before, you know that Python doesn't use camel case notation. So for example, if I say read students CSV or something like that, and put then X, Y, and Z, and say ask Code GPT, rename variables to make more sense and to follow Python naming convention. And let's see what it will do. It should rename the method to be with all lowercase with underscores, and it should, as you can see, it renamed those variables from the context around it. So it works very good for code refactoring, for putting comments, for writing documentation of the code, and similar. So as you can see, ChatGPT is very versatile and you can use it for code. Just be careful and don't use it on confidential code with keys and similar, because always have in mind that data is to the cloud. There are more extensions for code generation by using those large language models, Some of the tools include GitHub Copilot, Tab9, Codium, ChatGPT of course, but all of those tools are paid. So in order to use them, you need to pay. ChatGPT is free if you use it over the UI. So for now, probably it is the best solution for code generation and refactoring. So with ChatGPT, we just scratched the surface. The number of applications is almost unlimited. Code generation capabilities and refactoring is very impressive with large language models, but will it replace programmers? It's hard to say, but as of now we can ensure at least one thing. It won't replace programmers soon, but it will replace programmers who don't use these tools. Either if you are a programmer, project manager, recruiter, or any other profile, you must find at least one application where ChatGPT can make your life easier on a daily basis. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you in more sessions in the future. Bye.